Hey TV fans, I am here to talk about another episode of Yellowjackets. So today, with a couple of special guests, I'm going to be talking about Season 1, Episode 3, which is called The Dollhouse. So if you would like to introduce yourselves, special guests.
Sounds good. Thank you, Keith. I am Medium Melanie of the Yellowjackets Hive podcast, along with my co-host.
I'm Emily.
And we've been podcasting about Yellowjackets now for some months. We obviously love the show. We both got into it kind of early and cannot wait for season 2. I mean, it premieres on March 24th, which is about a month away. And gosh, with all of the teasers and trailers coming out, it's been super exciting speculating on, what we're going to see in season 2.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So thanks for joining me today. This should be a good discussion. There's quite a bit to talk about with this episode. But just before we start, just a little bit about what attached you to the show, what really stood out, and what are your memories of seeing it for the first time?
Actually, just stumbled across it on accident. I was watching TV one night and the pilot happened to be on, I think they aired it 2 weeks early, as a special preview. And I watched it and I was immediately hooked from the first 2 minutes of the show. It reeled me in with that scene of the girl falling into the pit. And I was a week-to-week viewer of the show from the very beginning. So I've been in the trenches since Yellowjackets started, and I've loved every minute of it.
In the pit, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And, for me, I started watching it after it had started airing, but I got into it because I was watching Dexter New Blood. And then I saw the commercials and was like, wow, this looks right up my alley. The pilot just drew me right in. I'm a huge fan of the 90s. I used to produce and sometimes co-host the 90210 show. So teen dramas are big in my world, the 90s, all the nostalgia, and just that opening pit girl scene for me. I mean, I've never seen anything like that before. It drew me right in. And the 90s bangers on the pilot, probably one of my favorite things. I love the 90s music in Yellowjackets too.
I agree.
Put it on catch up, which I think is one of the good things about this era. Then everything is available now if you don't see it live, because in the past you had to wait months and months to get a chance to see it. If you didn't catch it on TV, you would probably have to wait ages for the VHS or whatever the case may be, or maybe reruns or something. But the mouth hit where I started hearing people talk about it, and I thought, okay, yeah, I think I need to check this one out. And gems in the casting as well, people I'd not even heard of, so they get a good balance between well-known actors but also newer, fresher actors.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, and season 2, big pickup with Elijah Wood, right? I mean,
stepping up. Yeah.
That is a huge addition to the cast.
And Lauren Ambrose.
Oh my gosh, Lauren Ambrose.
Yeah, well,
too.
That's the big one for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. 6 Feet Under. Whew.
That's one of my favorite shows ever. So it's a Taisha themed episode, and we actually get 3 different timelines with her in this episode, because in 96 in the wilderness, she actually makes the decision that then the group should go to the lake. And there's a bit of a debate between the various members whether they should. They actually take a vote on it, and Shona is the decisive vote, which means it goes Taisha's way. And they go off to the lake and later on the cabin. And some of the events in the cabin actually correlate with Taisha's past, because another timeline we see a very young Taisha and witnessing her nana's death, which definitely there's some implications of supernatural stuff at play in that scene, I think. But it's a nice tie-in with then what Lottie and Taisha find in the attic later on in 96.
Yeah.
And obviously then in the present 2021, Taisha's main political rival, Phil, posts a very nasty attack ad describing her as a cannibal, the douche. So
I mean, it was clever to give him credit, but little
yeah,
much, right? Little much.
yeah. When consider her strategy in response to that, whether like thoughts of like maybe even pulling out of the race, but how's she going to handle it? And that decision becomes even more complicated when her son starts acting aggressive. And then we get a bit more with Shona and her marriage situation. She tracks Jeff to a hotel, suspecting cheating on her, and then stalker alert because Adam shows up out of the blue. A woman with Jeff, she seems to think that confirms her suspicions. So she's happy to pursue Stalker Boy and that old fling. And we also get more on the road trip, obviously, with Natalie and with Misty.
Yeah.
Get locked up. It's actually not Taisha who bails them out. It's actually Kevin in the end. And Misty puts that in motion. Stirring the pot there, Misty, as always.
I think your point about it being Taissa focused is very impactful. We see a lot of eye references, like we see the eye references with Manny and Sammy's doll. We see it with her Nana. We see the man with no eyes. So there's something with like the metaphor of like sight or something that's going on there.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of interesting. But Misty and Nat and their road trip is interesting too because of the timing, right? Like Emily and I were just discussing it. Like, how did the police know, when to come there? Like when they were breaking in, and then also to his work when they found his body. Like, how did they get that information? The timing is very strange, much like the Adam and Shauna timing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of coincidence in this episode, and some of them we may get answered later, some we may not. Some might just hang there because definitely at this point in the season, they're throwing up all sorts of red herrings, people who could be connected or could not be.
When they're in the car and Natalie or Misty is texting Kevin pretending to be Natalie, and she says something along the lines of like, I know dating at our age is pointless because at our age they're all like crumbs at the bottom of a chip bag. Yeah. And then she laughs and she says mostly, and Natalie looks at her and she's like, what, got a whole chip?
There's the jerky line too, which I love from them. There's a lot of good lines of dialogue in here, but when Misty gets the jerky, I feel like Natalie calling her out is, a slight foreshadowing of the cannibalism to come.
Yeah.
Why is she choosing jerky though after eating people? Seriously, you would think that they all would have gone like vegetarian.
Yeah.
Well, some of them did.
Some of them did. Misty definitely did not.
No.
Misty in this episode, her using her sort of obsession with true crime to advantage, like when they're looking around the house and she's talking about going through garbage, she's like throwing out statistics and things. And so I think that's something that's very realistic about Misty's character, and probably because she is a bit of a loner and underdog, that sort of character is more likely to maybe be drawn to that sort of macabre type subject, I feel, maybe. But yeah, it's good consistency that we see her using that in the scenes with Natalie, and it's an exciting dynamic to watch unfold because they don't trust each other, but yet in a way they have no choice but to work with one another.
Yeah.
Because it's like Misty said it, I think it's in the second episode where like Natalie says, well, how do you know how do I know like you didn't send the postcard to yourself? And she says, well, I could say the same about you. So
yeah,
it's that thing
we'll just
of they have to work together. Yeah. So it's a lot of fun to watch.
Travis's initially. Like, she was trying to like get them out of there. Like, she was like, Nat, are you sure you want to go in? Don't you want to go like get some wings or whatever? Like, was she trying to stall or get her out of there? Like, it's like she knew the police were coming, right? I mean, I keep going back to that, like the timing of the whole Misty police Nat Travis thing to me. Like, I can't get over it.
Yeah.
And her finding the note that she finds there too. Like, that note is so, like, it's that suspect. Like, there's no other way to put it. Like, she finds a note that says, tell Nat she was right. Like, and we've talked about this like a bunch. Like, at first when I watched the show, I thought that it meant tell Natalie that Natalie was right. But the longer I thought about it, like, what if the she in the note isn't even referring to Natalie? What if it's referring to someone else?
Yeah.
So it could be tell Natalie that Lottie was right about something. I don't know. Like, I'm just throwing an idea out there.
Yeah. I think that's possible because, like, I think it would be more suspenseful if, like, it wasn't literally what it says. Like, there would be more drama if certainly if you could have more than one reading on it.
Took it, and she used her citizen detective-y pencil rubbing skills to even like discern that the message was under there. So, you know, someone did not want that note to be seen also.
Taissa calls, or when Natalie calls Taissa when she's in jail to bail her out, Taissa's talking about Travis, and Taissa says, he disappeared on you for a reason. Well, what was that reason? Like, what made Travis, like, changing your name and, like, disappearing from everyone you know? Like, that takes a lot of, like, commitment and dedication to actually disappear. So, like, was he just that traumatized by what happened to him out there? Or, like, did something else happen when they came back that made him want to move away and not have anybody know where he is?
I mean, something has to have triggered him, though, right? Because we saw the Polaroid of adult Nat and Travis together. So, like, we know they've seen each other. Misty doesn't know they've seen each other because she says, oh, you guys haven't seen each other in, 25 years? But, like, something has to have triggered that for him if they were actually in contact and then he just goes dark. Like, you don't just go dark and turn into John Garcia at Willowbrook Ranch.
Maybe the end scene versus the barn scene, just while we're on that stuff. So what did you think when you first saw that scene? Were you with Natalie? Did you think there's something else going on, or did you think it was maybe a suicide, or where did you stand?
I mean, I didn't think it was a suicide just because of, like, logistically, like, how would he have been able to string himself up like that from that equipment?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's what made me think it wasn't a suicide, because that would be really hard to do to yourself.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. So.
And eventually we see, like, the wax marks, right? Like, implying that there was some kind of ceremony or ritual or something, you know, that was done there. So unless it was a self-sacrifice, I got to think that he died at the hands of somebody else.
It's a great gut punch at the end of the episode. I remember watching that for the first time and being, okay, oh my God, I didn't see that coming.
No,
not
at all.
See that.
So yeah, that I mean, just for like a cliffhanger from an episode, that's one of the standout cliffhangers of the season. Definitely, it might be the best one. You know, it's certainly one of the best ones. I think Aisha's character and what we see from her in this episode, because I like then they take a vote on whether to go to the lake or stay, because that fits the fact that she's running for office in the present. So I like that. And
she's a leader.
Yeah, and that is a consistent theme with her, where I sort of feel like she's the sort of one who's like more ruthless than you first realise. Like, she's happy to be quite laid back and reserved, and then the aggressive streak comes out of nowhere. Like, she Because I think about that, you know, when she crippled Ali in the pilot, the plan for that, like she decided then she wasn't right for the team, and no one else would like had the guts to do that really on that team.
Akilah was like, when Ty was doing her hair or vice versa, you know, Akilah said something like, you know, you're not as much of a bitch as all the JV girls make you out to be or something. So, she's got a soft side too, but she's also ruthless AF.
It's very blunt the way she's talking to Natalie over the phone in that scene as well. So, yeah, I think that's maybe just her way of dealing with the toughness of life. Maybe she does shut down a little bit and shut off emotions, and sometimes that's like in a way what you need for a political career. But there's good and bad to that, because obviously we see with her personal life, she doesn't always handle the Sammi stuff the best. Like her reaction to him in the playground was like the wrong reaction.
Yeah.
So.
Her priorities seem to be focused more on the campaign than on her family, and I think that's ultimately going to be her, you know, big downfall. From her childhood in that third timeline with her grandma, you know, really kind of sets the table for her going into these fugue states. I feel like it's kind of teasing early, like her going into these, you know, these states that she goes into, and it's been like a lifelong thing. So it's not something that was like specifically triggered from the trauma of the plane crash. It's something that she's in some capacity been experiencing these things, you know, her whole life.
In control, and she wields so much power over the rest of them just because she has more money, she has a bit more prestige, and it's a nice reveal actually than she's been, you know, the journalist who we thought was a journalist is actually her undercover detective who she's been using to spy on the other girls, as well as a political rival, but importantly the rest of the group. So that's a nice reveal as well.
Jessica Roberts is equivalent to she's like the Olivia Pope of Yellowjackets. I don't know if you watched Scandal, but
I did see some of it. Yeah.
She's a good fixer. Until, you know,
until she's not.
Until she's not. Until she gets fixed.
There's always eventually there's a downfall with that sort of character, isn't there? Yeah. Stayed where the plane is, where the crash site is, and hope you get fined, or would you take the chance and go to the lake? Yeah.
It just makes more sense, like, especially considering like they'd already been out there for 3 days at this point, and granted, this was back in 1996, so technology was a little bit different than it is now, but they obviously expected to be found very quickly, and that obviously didn't happen. So you're running out of resources. You don't really have any other option. You have to go to, you need water to survive. Like, you can survive without food for a lot longer than without water. So they were smart to make that decision to go to the lake because they knew that they needed water.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think I would have gone to the lake too. I think they did the right thing, you know, riding on the plane itself, and they were able to get more supplies for like fire and all that stuff at the cabin. So I think it makes sense. But one thing that struck me as odd, right? When they're at the lake, they see the reflection. Lottie sees the reflection. Like, what are the odds? Just at that like perfect time of day, like they see the reflection. Was it there the whole time and she just happened to notice it? Or is it possible there was somebody up there, like, making it reflect? Because when they're walking in this episode in the woods, like, we see the camera perspective kind of shifting. Like, there's another presence with them, like the camera angles and the ominous music and stuff. Like, I don't know. Once Showtime said, you know, they weren't out there alone, I started thinking, like, was that reflection? Did some person make it reflect? Or maybe not. Maybe Lottie just happened to see it and the sun was shining in just the right spot. I don't know.
But also, like, when they show the cabin, you can't see the lake from the cabin, like, in the show. So where did that reflection actually come from?
Right. I mean, the plane's out in the woods, but I don't think that there's enough like refractory glass surfaces for a reflection of that nature to shine all the way down from up there down to the lake, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a
Just
long
saying.
shot. Yeah.
Just saying.
So that could obviously point to it being something supernatural, or like you said, maybe a coincidence. But I mean, yeah, definitely quite early on. There's certain supernatural hints planted, and certainly it's something I think they're going to lean more into in season 2. I would expect a lot more supernatural stuff.
Oh yeah.
Because they have been quite reserved with it up to now. Maybe to keep you guessing whether it is like a supernatural. But certainly, I mean, jumping ahead to a future episode, but certainly what happens to Laura Lee, that's definitely feels like something supernatural going on.
Yeah.
Belief for a few different things, so it would make sense, you know, that is the case. And Showtime did also just say, you know, or one of the lines in the trailer was the darkness, we brought it back with us. So like there is the sense of like something like, to your point, of supernatural, this darkness or whatever it is.
Supernatural passed on to her from her nana, and then it's possible then she, because there's this theory that she might have passed it on to Sammi then.
Yep.
That's another possibility. Because I mean, again, it's a future episode, but there's some debate over what happens with Sammi and Teresa, whether it's Teresa doing it or maybe she's passed on her thing to Sammi and it's actually him doing it. So almost like hereditary sort of thing, which...
And something we've talked about too is when they have that scene where they film Sammi in the back seat of the car before the crash, in that same future episode where Lottie is a child in the back seat. Like there's definitely a correlation of like the child who's some kind of a seer in some capacity, and Sammy's like the next generation Lottie or whatever. But it does seem likely that it's either hereditary or environment, because there's some stuff going on with Sammi, maybe a combination of both. But I think the show is lending itself towards suggesting, you know, it could be something passed on.
Of it, like this feels like a very horror-centric style episode. You get a bit of a survival horror feel with them going on this hike, different things happening to them. One scene that's really painful to watch is when the coach has the insect attack his wound. That's ouch. That's gross. Like that really is, and very
poor
awkward.
Coach Ben. Poor Coach Ben. And you know, one line I liked, just off subject, earlier when Misty was like, "Take off your shirt, I'll squirt you." Like, could we get, and like poor Coach Ben? Like between the insects eating him and Misty wanting to like squirt him, I mean, it's a rough time for him out there.
Yeah, no, it really is, and yeah, the actress playing young Misty is like spot on as well.
She's so great.
That's one where you can tell, that's the same person. That's the person who grew up to be that other person. So quite gothic with the scene in the attic, but I also like how it cuts between the 3 different timelines in that scene in the attic. So you literally see Teresa at 3 different points. So going up to the coffin, and then the present Teresa who like steps on the eyeball.
Manny's eye. That was really creepy. Yeah. Mirrored with the grandmother funeral eye situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But that's really good direction. The way it like builds to all 3 and you're following it along sort of parallel.
How do you think that doll ended up that way?
It's a good question.
All smashed. Takes the doll from her son. She takes it and she puts it up on top of like some piece of furniture in their living room, and you don't see it again. And the next scene where you see it is when she wakes up on the couch, and for some reason she goes down into the basement, and that's where she finds the doll smashed on the floor. So I was thinking she destroyed it in like one of her fugue states. That's really what would make the most sense to me, I feel like.
Or the
Yeah.
dog. Like maybe Biscuit could have destroyed it, but how would Biscuit have got it off the piece of furniture? I mean, I don't think that logistically could even work.
No.
That we see in the basement. So there's definitely some significance to that, like one eye missing. And Leonard, the teddy bear, had an eye missing too, right? Like there's a lot of like eye stuff.
Yeah.
The eyes on the trees. I don't know. Lots of eyes.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah. And another, and this is more tenuous link, but Shauna has that line about motherfucking eyes being everywhere. So that's that's another use of eyes. So if you're really reaching, you could say that's another link. But
that's so true.
Yeah. Eyes watching you everywhere. So.
And the grandma says, "Don't let him take my eyes" as well.
Yes.
About the Michael Jackson guy. So.
Yes.
Michael Jackson guy.
Eyeless Michael Jackson. I don't know. That's what I call him.
Feud with like Jackie and with Taisha. That sort of built. Because it's almost like I think there is a pecking order thing going on with them where they both are kind of seen as like the two leaders of the team. And one of the things I quite like about the contrast between them in this location compared to, back home is I think Jackie no longer has the same sort of power and that's been like reversed. And we see in another episode how Shona is more in her element out here, and like she's more like the survivalist, and suddenly Jackie feels a bit out of place, which is interesting.
We had talked to a mental health professional about some of the trauma in Yellowjackets before, and one of her suggestions was that girls who hadn't undergone like any major issues or trauma in their lives back in reality had a much harder time out there than the ones who've like dealt with some sort of adversity before. So Shauna is more in her element. She's dealt with like her parents getting divorced, like some other stuff. But Jackie, on the other hand, she's had this kind of idyllic life, and she doesn't know what to do in the woods. And when Shauna votes against her, then Shauna has to like circle back to Jackie and try to like, here's an extra blanket, I need my best friend, I'm really scared, like trying to kind of make it better that she voted against her to go to the lake in the first place. And that's like the first time, like you said, Jackie's diminishing out in the wilderness.
Yeah, because it really bothers her that they vote against her. Like, you can tell that it bothers her. When they get to that cabin and she opens that food and it's all spoiled and she throws it on the ground and she's like, we should have stayed by the plane. Like, Van was like, well, we didn't. So, like, what good is that going to do? Yeah. Like, get over it. Like, she was definitely bothered by the fact that people didn't want to do what she wanted to do.
Quite complex. I think she's not just the stereotypical queen bee. I think there's a lot more to her than that. So
I agree.
That's something I like. Shona plot in the present, tending to be with Homeland Security, is the best Shona scene in this episode. She's hilarious.
I love that.
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, just to come off spare of the moment with that was really great. And also
she's
the
so
receptionist
unconvincing.
is great as well. Like, yeah.
Yes.
The receptionist isn't taking any crap from her, basically. He's like, I've seen this routine before.
Yeah.
And again, like Adam just showing up right at that exact time is strange. Like, is he stalking her? Does he just happen to be there? What are the odds? Like, he makes it seem like, oh, it was meant to be.
It's long odds, isn't it?
And he drops the Kurt Vonnegut quote too, right?
He says to her, my studio space is down the street and this place makes a classic martini. He was not an actual artist. Like, he did not have an actual studio. So that was a lie.
Yes.
Who goes to a hotel lobby just for a martini or a drink of any kind? You would naturally go to like a bar or a coffee house or there's so many holes in what he says. You're in a bigger city. The likelihood of you just randomly showing up in the same place as someone like that. Someone you've had previous with is very unlikely. Did at least look into her and them in general, the story. So maybe just taking a shine to her, he did become a little bit stalkerish or a little bit curious. Like, obviously, definitely in this episode, it plays him up as a bit of a red herring.
Connected, you know, he shows up at the same hotel where Jeff and Bianca were. Like, later on in another episode, he shows up at their house at like 4 a.m. I mean, could they be connected? Could like Jeff have been working with Adam in some weird way? I don't know, like probably not, but the fact that they're both in the same place at the same time, I don't know. I mean, is he stalking Shauna or is he working with Jeff?
Sort of a reading on it, then he was at the very least like stalking her to an extent and had like researched her background, because otherwise there's just too many question marks. And
I mean, we know he looks into her just based off of like a later episode when she goes to his apartment, she finds a book about the Yellowjackets in his apartment. So whether he looked into her after they had their little accident or like before they had their accident, like did he know about her before they ever even had that accident? And then he realized who she was, or did he just look into her after the accident and then realize like, oh, she's a part of this, like she's a yellow jacket, she's famous kind of thing.
Part of his motive could have been that idea of, almost seeking fame in a way, like just being associated with someone like that.
I want to go quote, "We are what we pretend to be, so we must be careful what we pretend to be." And I think that, you know, is either a red herring or it's very telling, and he's totally like pretending to be somebody else, and he's actually part of the cult. Not Javi, but maybe part of the cult. Could be.
Yeah, and it's possible, even though he's now out of the picture, it's possible we'll still maybe find out a little bit more about Adam in a future episode. It's a really strong episode, and I would say from the opening three, I think this is my favourite of the opening three. It's a really good one for Taisha. As I said, there's some good direction, some good like horror type scenes. It's not my favourite of the season. That's still to come.
It's sadder every time I watch it, like when Natalie discovers Travis at the end, because she's just like so devastated and so broken by that. Like every time I watch it, I just feel worse for her than I did before.
And you can see Misty has some like genuine concern for Nat too. Like she's not faking that. Like you can tell when Misty's kind of faking, but she's like, whoa, like, you know, you don't want to see this. Are you okay? Like she seems to be very genuine when helping Nat like deal with that discovery a little bit too. Yeah. So that just kind of shows like Misty does care in her own way, even if she had something to do with it. You know, she still cares about Nat.
Attachment to this girl, dating back many years at this point, so it's hard to sort of switch that off no matter what you may be up to.
Dialogue in there too. I pulled a few of the quotes I liked. Also, the Caligula hasn't learned to use the phone yet one is like one of my favorites. I think that's hilarious. I absolutely love that quote. And then, you know, just one more reference to the Taissa driven episode when she says, you know, I'm different than what people expect and it scares them. But whatever they say about me, I hope you know it isn't true. And then, you know, Sammi says, you're not the bad one. I feel like there's just so much to that scene and that line of dialogue. You know, is she the bad one? If she is, she sure doesn't know it, you know. So I think there's a lot of good dialogue in this episode. When people do bad things, they should be punished for them, right? Is another Taissa line that she says to Sammi.
And he says yes. Like, he agrees with her that you need to be punished when you do things wrong. So I think that was him admitting that he knew what he did at the park was wrong. But he's also so confused because his mom is doing all these things that are not okay, and like she's not taking responsibility for them, and like they're putting the blame on him, and he doesn't understand why, and like he can't even be honest because nobody's going to believe him.
It's a tough
Yeah.
spot to be in for Sammi.
Yeah. I feel so
Yeah.
bad for that kid.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Like that stood out to me. I was rewatching the episode earlier, and very good, because it's very hard to find really good child actors, and that was a great bit of casting.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting, I think, the racial aspects with Teresa, because they definitely dig into race this season with her character, and like probably commenting on not just the general life of, you know, a person of color, but I mean also I think someone wanting to run for office, you know, you've got twice the hurdle, really.
Think of the title of this episode, The Dollhouse. Do you see it as like a microcosm of their life in the cabin, or do you think it's like geared more towards like Taisa's life and the way that it's kind of laid out to be this like, you know, great life, but maybe things aren't always as they seem, or I don't know. What do you think about The Dollhouse, the name?
I naturally went to It Was Them in the Cabin, and I think partly because they're like so young and vulnerable as well, and yeah, but I naturally went to that, but you could definitely read it as either way.
I went with that too.
Yeah.
I love the naming of the episodes. It's always interesting to discuss, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in this case, you do have to think about why it's called Dollhouse, and I like stuff like that.
It's like someone's playing with them, right? Like
Yeah.
they're toys of somebody or something out there.
Well, also, like, some of the episodes, like, they say the title in the episode. Like, they say F sharp and F sharp because Laura Lee tells them that she was trying to play the piano and the key that she was pressing wrong was F sharp.
Okay.
So
Mhm.
she
That's
just
cool.
said F sharp, F sharp. And in the fourth episode, which is called Bear Down, Misty tells Coach Ben to bear down when he's trying to go to the bathroom in the woods.
That's right.
There's a couple other ones too, but those are just like the two off the top of my head that I can like
And
think.
Doom coming, definitely.
And Blood Hive too.
Yes.
Yeah. I actually, I don't know why this made me chuckle, but I sort of like Misty's line about I don't like awkward silences because they make me feel awkward. It's just a very simple line, but for some reason it made me laugh, sort of thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I love
Yeah.
that one too.
Yeah. But speaking of like episodes, like, do you have a favorite episode from this season?
Of course.
Of course, yeah.
It's Doom coming for me. I love Doom
Okay.
coming. I love
Yeah,
Doom.
that's my favorite too.
Yeah, I think that is my favorite. Yeah, and I don't think it was first time around, like, because obviously that's sort of they're all high trippy sort of episode. Yeah, you don't always get into them first time around, but second time around, yeah, it was just so suspenseful and moody, and like it's like how much of this is supernatural stuff driving it, how much is it just their natural states, and
Yeah.
just how far it went with it, I thought was really effective, and you had a good mix of light and dark in that episode. So the Halloween episode I like because it's always good to have a Halloween themed episode, and yeah, brings a bit of personality. So that's cool.
Yes, that was a good one. The Daria line, and then Callie
Yeah.
wearing Jackie's costume or uniform. I thought that was a good one. I think is the Antler Queen and Pit Girl. Do you have any thoughts on that? I always like to ask people. It's Lottie, or do you think that they like pass the antlers?
Yeah, I'm sticking with Lottie. I think it could be her. But I do have like or feelings towards like either Teresa or maybe Shona as like a dark horse, maybe.
Yeah.
Just because I think they feel like the sort of characters who their personalities, you would think they're the least likely to be involved in stuff like that and to have that stuff. So I think they're definitely ones to watch.
I agree.
Maybe Teresa, especially, I feel. Because I think with Shona, we've seen examples of her acting out and rebelling already in the first season. And obviously Teresa has sort of kept a lot of that under wraps. So I feel there may be something else with her as well.
And what about Pit Girl? What do you think?
Maybe a character who we haven't seen that much of, because you obviously get the ones that are focused mainly, and then there are others in the group who haven't been so much. So I wonder if that could be Pit Girl.
We'll have to see.
Our review of Yellowjackets Season 1, Episode 3, The Dollhouse. Lots for you guys to discuss and for you guys to comment on in the comments section. Like and subscribe as always. You can share me out on social media. There's a patreon.com/board now. And I guess if you guys want to promote anything, any upcoming episodes before we go.
Thank you. Yeah, we are at yellowjacketshive.com. We've got all of our episodes there. And Emily, we've got some really fun content planned. We have an exciting interview with a cast member coming up that will air at a later date. And we're in talks with some other cast members to come on. So we are pretty excited. Emily, what do you think is your favorite episode that we've done so far? Which one do you think is your favorite?
I really liked the symbol episode a lot, and when we had Ro come on, she was great.
Yes, we did have an episode. We talked about the Yellowjackets characters as fairy tale archetypes. That was great, and I agree. The symbol was probably my favorite. Both at yellowjacketshive.com. Check them out. And Keith, we can't thank you enough for having us on to talk with you about episode 3. Maybe we could do it again sometime.
Yeah, we'll definitely do this again. This is a nice little team up and should get both channels out to a few more viewers. And okay, thanks guys. Take care. And we'll see you guys again soon.
All right. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.